We still have real disagreements with the government about its denial of basic freedom to its citizens. And we're going to continue to raise these issues and stand up for the protection of human rights. I was asked to speak to the OAS when we were in the process of moving forward, and I said to them quite bluntly, we're doing what you wanted us to do. It's the right thing to do, but now we expect you to speak up when we talk about the violation of human rights. You all must be part of making sure that this reform ultimately takes place. But shifting from isolation to engagement proved that our promise to listen rather than dictate to the region was more than just words. In the past several months, I've had conversations with the presidents of Brazil, Colombia, Chile, and many more, and all of them told me how it has significantly enhanced their ability and flexibility at home to build partnerships and get things done with the United States of America. We also have a chance to restore our relationship with Argentina, which has been on rocky grounds for over there. When I recently traveled to give a keynote address at the World Economic Forum in Davos last January, I made a point of meeting for some time with Argentina's new president. And in March, President Obama made the first visit of an American president in more than a decade. President Marcy has laid out an ambitious reform agenda and demonstrated a renewed willingness to return to the international financial community. It's already yielding new collaboration in the energy sector, as well as improved security cooperation. Our relationship with Cuba and Argentina illustrates an important theme. We won't close off any opportunity to build relationships with the people of the region. And I might add, that includes Venezuela. Last December, we saw a watershed in Venezuela politics, an election won by the opposition. Their National Assembly now represents the diversity of the political views of the country. But, as neighbors who care about the Venezuelan people, we are deeply concerned about the current economic situation, food shortages, lack of medicine, and even water, blackouts, rising crime rates, homicide rates. And the Venezuelan government continues to commit serious human rights violations, throwing people in jail, intimidating and silencing its opponents, denying prisoners due process, and holding them in inhumane conditions. The government is taking steps to prevent the people's representatives in the Assembly from carrying out the duties in which they are elected to carry out. So releasing political prisoners like the mayor of Caracas, the opposition leader, Mr. Lopez, are absolutely necessary in starting a productive dialogue between the government, the opposition, and the hemisphere. That's what's needed to overcome the extreme polarization and economic disasters occurring now in Venezuela. It's a dialogue that's long overdue, and the United States, in consultation with all our partners in the region, is prepared to help. Progress is possible. We've seen it. Not even 2 decades ago, Colombia was a war zone. I remember my first visit down there as I was writing Plan Colombia. Never meeting with the president of the country. And 2 days after I left, one of the cartels walked into the Supreme Court and shot up and killed Supreme Court justices while they sat hearing the case. Back then, I was either the chairman or the ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee, championing Plan Colombia in the Senate, working with Republicans and Democrats to help the people of Colombia pull themselves back from the brink. We invested a lot of money. They invested 4 times as much in the effort. Today, we're on the verge of a historic peace deal between the government of Colombia and the guerrilla groups, any one of the longest-running conflicts in modern history, God willing. It's a remarkable transformation and an affirmation of the power of democracy to solve challenges if you have the political will to take the chance to do it. Success of Plan Colombia also offers a model for what we're working toward in Central America, helping governments take responsibility and address their own challenges while why we've taken the bold step to dramatically increasing our assistance for El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. $750 million just from this year's budget, up from $560 million last year, while also insisting on high expectations and setting benchmarks as to what they have to meet in order to qualify for the funding. And they are. They created, to help the IDB, a thing called the Alliance for Progress, to strengthen and coordinate their efforts. And those three countries are investing on their own $2.6 billion in their own money this year. This is an area where I've been particularly hands-on as Vice President. I've already met with the leaders of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras 3 times just since January. And I'm proud that we're beginning to see some progress. Finally, we're dealing with countries that are in trouble. Detail matters. Detail matters. Specific, precise goals agreed to matter. The only way that occurs is with repetition and constant meeting. We started anti-corruption initiatives to reform police departments, courts, customs, tax collection systems, economic programs to tackle poverty, helping towns and cities to set up community policing to generate greater confidence in the police departments and make neighborhoods literally safer. We've been able to do this because we've developed some partnerships and trust. The kind that can only be built after spending hours and hours and hours with specific leaders. The Congresswoman has heard me say this, and I dare not try to improve on famous Speaker Tip O'Neill's axiom in all politics and local. All foreign policy is personal. It's all personal. You have to know the other leader with enough detail, whether they like you or not, or you like them not, to understand what their objectives are and what their limits are. Listening to their perspective while sharing their own. I always say when I sit down with a foreign leader, and I've met every world leader, literally every major world leader in the last 35 years, I always start by saying, I never attempt to tell another man or woman what's in their interest, and I never attempt to tell another country what's in their interest. But I'm here to tell you what's in our interest and why I think it's helpful to you. If you want to participate, we're in. If you don't, your decision. It's amazing how much further along that gets you than going in and attempting to dictate. We have a long way to go. And it's going to require more than just presidents and political leaders. It requires the business community, and civil society, and individual citizens all pulling together. And I believe the people of the region are actually so fed up with the circumstances they've been in for so long that they're ready to take a chance. They're ready to change. Earlier this year, I attended the inauguration of President Morales in Guatemala. Jimmy Morales, the comedian. He was anything but a comedian that day when he was sworn in. He was elected on his promise to end corruption after the previous president and vice president were both ousted on corruption charges. His inauguration was fascinating. He made clear in his inaugural address what his priority would be. That's one of the reasons he was elected. The people of Guatemala said we're sick and tired of the corruption and the special interests. And during his speech, his inauguration speech, he looked into the cameras and said to everyone in front of him, and he said to all the people listening, he said, I ask you, my fellow citizens, at home as well as here, to stand, place your hand on your heart, and join me in taking the oath to fight corruption and put Guatemala first. I've never seen that happen. Doesn't mean it will happen, but I've never seen that happen. And all the reports were throughout the country of Guatemala. Ordinary citizens, some illiterate, standing up, putting their hand on their heart, raising their right hand. All I'm saying saying is that means there's an overwhelming yearning in the region for better governance. Corruption is a cancer that eats away at the body politic. Nobody likes it. Rich, poor, left, right, center. But in order for Guatemala to succeed and reach its full potential, the entire nation has to contribute. Everyone has to be part of it. That requires some sacrifices on the part of ordinary citizens as well. But it was a powerful moment, a powerful message. So we have made progress. The opportunities before us are real. So are the considerable challenges that remain in Central America throughout the hemisphere. Generations of endemic poverty. Weak institutions out of decades of corruption and political strife. Pervasive violence that still plagues too many countries in the Americas. But they're trying to fight through it. In Colombia, in Central America, it's possible. And the United States is committed, our administration is committed to helping our partners address the dynamics that have held them back for much too long. I'm just asking a picture, I'm being very serious. Imagine if Central America and Guatemala and Panama was actually economically prosperous. Actually, a government that functioned, not undermined by corruption. Actually, had energy and the capacity to attract business. Imagine how transformative that alone would be for connecting hemisphere. But only then can we undertake the hard work to meet these challenges. The reality is security is the baseline for all progress we hope to see. Without security, virtually nothing else is possible. Now, we're already deeply engaged in security of the region against narco-traffickers, human smuggling organizations, organized crime, gangs who rule through violence and fear. We already have our military engaged in advising, playing a major part, spending tens of billions of dollars to try to coordinate efforts. Our law enforcement communities are beginning to work more closely. U.S. Southern Command plays an essential role in helping our partners strengthen their defensive capabilities and target transnational crime. But in order to succeed, there's also an urgent need to institute reform, replacing corrupt courts, training civilian police to respect human rights, modernizing the courts and customs systems which are rife with corruption. Just to name a few. And we're helping there as well. Representatives of the Department of Justice are in place right now assisting and assisting with investigators in the fight against organized crime. Literally helping these countries who've never had a court system that was anything other than corrupt, how to build such a system. Literally doing what we did in Plain Colombia. The FBI vetting with lie detector tests thousands of Colombian police, expelling those who did not pass. We've sent security advisors to help clean up the police forces, aid prosecutors, so that the people in the region can begin to have some confidence in the law, the rule of law. In too many places, and you know it, those of you who do business in the region, extreme poverty prevents people from reaching anywhere near their potential. And so we've made sure that growth is shared more broadly, that no community is marginalized or excluded from economic opportunity. That's why we created a wide variety of programs, our AID programs and others, to spur entrepreneurship, especially young people and women, to help small businesses. In places like Honduras, Guatemala, Haiti, we're working to combat hunger and malnutrition. The kind of challenges that set children back. And in many instances, science now shows sets them back permanently by affecting their brain development. And we're working with the International Development Bank and other partners to help countries improve their tax collection. We're sending down folks from our IRS to show them how to set up a system. Increasing transparency, implementing economic reforms in order to better create a business environment. Because to really create jobs and opportunity, the region needs to draw much more investment from the private sector, both in their own home countries as well as from abroad. And by the way, as I say all around the world, these aren't dictates that we're insisting on. No nation today is able to economically prosper without a transparent business environment. No one's going to invest. Without being able to deal with and assure investors that corruption is under control. Without having a tax system that actually is fair, where people who owe taxes have them collected. Look, these issues will only worsen if we fail to address the existential threat of climate change, which is already impacting on the livelihood and security of so many vulnerable people throughout the region. And maybe some of you don't believe there's climate change, so I don't want to get argued about that. Let's talk about the changing weather. Denying climate change these days is like denying gravity in my view, but that's another story. But look what's happening in the region. Those of you do business here. Farmers can't plant. Drought has a significant impact, including on hydroelectric power, denying access to power in certain of these countries. So that's how we're helping farmers across Central America and the Caribbean adapt climate-resilient approaches like drip irrigation, rainwater harvesting, drought-resistant seeds. In Jamaica, for example, we've trained more than 3,000 farmers. And in agricultural states like mine and yours, we're used to what is done by our Department of Agriculture. We've trained 3,000 farmers at climate-smart field schools. They've increased their crop yields by 30% in the number of cases of particular crops. We're developing tools to help farmers throughout Central America share vital information about weather forecasts and blights, like coffee rust, so they can plan and adapt to the changing climate. Violence and poverty, they're the twin drivers in the other major challenge. Migrants traveling from their homes to the United States, including unaccompanied children. That's what initially got me engaged. I was actually in the Middle East working on a license question. I got a call from the president, would I go? Then, from there, to meet with the Latin American presidents, and make it clear to them something had to be done. Well, the real solution to the challenge of migration is helping our partners build safer, more prosperous communities, so that people stay and make their lives in their home countries. We sit around and think, it must be really cool. It must be, a family in rural Guatemala saying, look, why don't we hawk everything we have, sell the kitchen table, everything we got, give it to a coyote. He'll take us across the border, leave us in the desert, the country we really don't want to go to in the first place. We don't speak the language anymore. This will be fun. Let's go do that. Come on. People come for economic benefit, for their children. No one would undertake a journey as dangerous as is happening now, except out of desperation. In the meantime, we have to treat those who arrive on the borders with compassion and dignity. I know that's something you take very seriously in Tampa. I'm told we're joined today by representatives from the Children's Home in Tampa Bay and the Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services. organization, along with so many others, have provided vital services to vulnerable refugee children from